In this tutorial, I'll look at how to generate a quick z-depth pass for use in compositing and adding in depth of field. This is a workaround, in case maybe you forget to add it on in your render passes, or you need to have your z-depth going for compositing long before your beauty pass is done rendering. First, what I'll do is go into the render settings and change over from Mental Ray to Maya software. In Maya software, I'll turn on my highest quality anti-aliasing and use the multi-pixel filter. Make sure you set your pixel filter type to whichever pixel filter you're using in your anti-aliasing in your beauty pass. I'll choose a box filter and leave the blur alone for now. Just as a side, I have not turned on ray tracing as I don't need it and I want this to be a fast render. In the Common tab, I'll name this sequence. We're going to throw away the RGB and actually the whole sequence once we've extracted the z-depth. I'll call it Chapel DZ, and I'm rendering out an IFF sequence. Maya IFFs carry z-depth. Other formats such as TIFF or TGA do not, so it's important to choose the right one. I'll put the start frame at 1, and there's my sequence from 1 to 120. I've made sure that in my renderable cameras, camera 1 is set, and it's rendering out alpha and z-depth. And there's my full render size. Now I need to get a Lambert on everything so it renders fast. I'll right-click on my master layer and choose Overrides, New Material Override, and Lambert. We need to make sure we have a material and not just a surface shader, so it does actually try to shade in some way. Now I can batch render this, clicking under Render and choosing the dialog next to Batch Render. You can uncheck Use All Available Processors and set the number of processors to use to however many cores your machine has. I'll put this at 8 and click Batch Render and close. This will take a minute and batch render out an IFF sequence that I can extract the z-depth from. As you can see, the renders are very fast. I'll let this finish and show what it looks like when I'm done. My rendering finished in just a couple minutes, and I'll open up that sequence in F-check and see how the z-depth looks. I'll press the Start button and type in FCH, and there's F-check. I have a couple versions running because of multiple Maya installs. As you can see, it's located under Programs Autodesk Maya bin if you need to go find it. In F-check, I'll choose File, Open Animation to open a sequence. Here in the Images folder is my depth. Here in the Images folder I've got my depth, and I'll pick the first one and check Z Buffer and click Open. As we can see, the diffuse rendering is blown out by the lights, but when we click on the Z button, we see the Z depth. Once this registers in, you can choose File and Save Animation. I'll put it in a depth folder and change it, for example, to Targa Images. I've already rendered out a sequence so I could show it earlier, but I could name these, let's say, chapeldz.tga, and it'll save out this sequence. I'll click Save, and it'll overwrite those, rendering out the sequence of these as RGB data in the Targa. Once it's done, you can close F-check and take that sequence into Nuke for depth of field. As a side note, you can also use that to drive a lens blur in After Effects. It works either way. We've converted the z-depth to something readable by most any program, RGB data.